Well, hello there. Welcome back to Old Kenny's Photography. I hope you're doing okay. Photography here lately for me has been really slow. I don't know if it's just COVID or just people just don't seem to have any money, or they're too busy thinking they're a photographer with their iPhone. I don't know. I've been getting to shoot a lot of video though, and it's been keeping me busy. And I have some novels on Amazon now, some fiction stuff, and I thought today I'd talk a little bit about, how did I get started in photography? Because everybody has a different journey that they go through when it comes to photography or any kind of hobby. And what I thought, let me adjust my music here for a second. I just kind of share with you how things happen for me, and maybe I'll dig up some old pictures and kind of show you from back in the beginning. But I had a business, and it was a taxidermy studio, and I took lots of pictures out of necessity, not trying to be artistic, just to help my business. And so I was okay with that, but I wasn't out taking lots of pictures or anything like that. It wasn't until after I sold my business and decided I wanted to do something totally different, and I was going to go to China and teach English. That's different. And so this is what I did. I started making my plans to go to China, and I had my little Sanyo point and shoot. Like I said, it's okay. But I wanted to document lots of things, take videos and all that, and send to my friends in America. Let them see what's going on, because I was going to be there all by myself. I didn't realize, all the friends and everything that I'd be making soon. But so I go to China, and my Sony camcorder that I bought took 14 megapixel pictures. Oh my God! 14 megapixels. That's the best there is. As far as I knew, it was good, and it was back then. And it would take, what they call DVD quality, full HD on video. We do like a 30 HD, a 60 HD, and add this full HD. And it ate up a lot of file size, so there's something there. And the quality was really good. So I was going around taking lots and lots of pictures those first couple of years just using my camcorder. I didn't use the point and shoot camera so much because the camcorder took 14 megapixel pictures. But I used it all the time. I filmed all kinds of things with my students and taking pictures, and I used it during test time so I could go back and review the students speaking and evaluate their speech. So that camera was busy, and I'd had it, like I said, my first 2 years I used it a lot. And I started actually taking pictures of some of the girls, letting them model and stuff, and we had a lot of fun. My students were awesome. My first real camera was a Nikon D3300 crop sensor, and it had just came out, and it shot 24 megapixel pictures. Hey, that's all I shoot with. Is 24 megapixel crop sensor cameras anyhow. My D7100 and my 7200 are 24 megapixels. That's all you need. You don't need any more. Portrait photography, maybe high megapixel cameras they'll be better, landscape, and there's necessities, I can see where that would be better. But I take really, really, really good stuff with this. But the D3300 came with a 18 to 55 VR2 lens. That was actually a nice sharp lens, and you could focus within about 6.5 inches. So I was okay there, but I couldn't shoot anything. If there's a bird sitting in a tree, it was useless. So I ended up getting a 55 to 300 millimeter lens, and it was. I bought it because it's cheap, but it also was cheap. Plastic mounting bracket, and it was real success. Low light, it was really susceptible to things, but I understand I'm still learning. The shutter speed and the ISO. I'm learning. So I gradually got better and better pictures out of that lens, but it just couldn't bring anything in close enough, and so I ended up getting a 70 to 300 lens soon after, and it was a noisy old Sigma lens that went it'd fish and jerk and buck and snort and all kinds of stuff, but the photo quality on it was really, really good. I really liked the photo quality of that lens, even though the autofocus and everything else on it was awful. But I'm growing as a photographer, and we all go through these steps. It's hard to go out and buy the best on the best and all that, because really sometimes when we're just beginning, we really don't understand what the best is and why some people use different things. Portrait photographers use these lenses, and landscape guys use this, and we're still trying to understand the whole thing. But I did understand performance, and that old Sigma, I kept it around for a long time, and ended up selling it to a guy from Africa. But the D3300 was my stepping stone into. It just opened all new doors for me as a photographer, and then I started thinking about artistic things. I went from documenting buildings I was going to and places I was going to see in the city, and I was growing as a photographer, and my pictures gradually became more artistic. I knew what I wanted to see and how to, and I already understood a lot about lines and things like that, because of being a taxidermist. You have to really have a really good eye for detail and use of lines in your work. So that stuff was working for me, and I was also, during this growing period, I was taking thousands and thousands of shots, and we all need to learn. Just having a DSLR really doesn't make you a photographer. You got to understand that. To become a photographer, it takes a lot of work. If it was so easy, everybody would be doing it. Everybody tries, it seems like, with their telephone, but there's a difference. So anyhow, I went through some lenses, and I got a better camera. Well, matter of fact, the very next camera I bought is this camera. This is a D7100, and this was a total pro. Well, at the time, it was their prosumer cameras, their flagship crop sensor camera, and I got it, and it just opened up a whole new world. It had just so many more features than the D3300, even though both cameras shared essentially the exact same picture quality, probably even the same sensor. But I started investing a little bit more into my photography then, and the students, after I've been in China for a few years, most all my students were girls. They were English majors. They were going to be teachers, and they wanted me to take pictures of them. So I've been taking all this nature and bird pictures and all this kind of stuff, and now because of demand, I'm trying to learn how to be a portrait photographer, and which I love more than anything, I guess, in a way. But my first prime lens was just a little 35 millimeter Nikon lens with 1.8. And it was really, really good in low light, and it was sharp. Oh my cow! It was the sharpest lens at that time that I'd ever seen. I didn't understand until I got one the difference a prime lens can make in your photography. Now today we got zoom lenses that are really, really good. But when I bought this lens, it made a huge difference in my pictures. And if I can find some of those old photos, I might show you some of the very first portraits that I ever took. I'm going to look around and so you can see them behind me in this video. But I moved on. I got the 7100, and I went to another city, and my photography all of a sudden got into a lot of demand. By the time I got to Chuzhou, Anhui province, it's like the word was out. If you wanted to learn about photos, and then all of a sudden I go from, which I'm still learning. Even today I consider myself a student of photography, and I think we all should, because there's always something to learn. But I had people want to follow me all the time, take pictures with me, or they wanted me to take pictures of them. So I eventually, I got a 50 millimeter lens. I was wanting to stay with primes. Then I got my favorite prime lens of all time. I got my 85 millimeter 1.8 lens, and the difference between it and my 35 took great pictures. It's really, really good for environmental photography, especially because it's hard to get a really, really good bokeh. It's hard to get that total subject isolation with a wide lens. It's the nature of the beast. It's much easier to get all that bokeh. You got a 7200. At 200, 2.8, and man, you can just obliterate the world behind your model. But I was learning, and I got this 85 millimeter lens, and I was still using. I learned how to use that old 70 to 300 and get really good pictures with it, even though it was terrible in low light. Okay. That was my trade-off. Is the 85 millimeter I knew would be really good in low light, and I could get good bokeh. And when I shot environmental portraiture, I could put it like on f4 or f5.6, and you could make out the scene behind the model and tell the story. I'm really big on your photos should tell a story. You should not shoot every shot with total subject isolation. If you're shooting somebody outside, there's a reason why you go outside. It's because of the scenery. So you need to create a depth of field that allows you to tell a story with your pictures. And I also learned about not wanting to shoot with trash in the background, anything that would take away from my subject. And these are things you learn as a photographer, is how to eliminate distraction. That's what number one thing in a way is when you're shooting a subject like a model, you want to do away with all other distraction. And during this time also over there, the only thing I could use was free online editors, because if I downloaded something in China, it's going to be in Chinese. It's hard to find, anything anyhow that's in English. And I started using iPicky, the iPiccy photo editor, and I edited thousands and thousands and thousands of photos with iPicky, and learned how to use that really, really well at that time. And they still have, like, their cloning tool is fantastic. There's certain things that they have in that software, and it's free, that I still use today. Now, my other stuff that I use Polar. How do they spell it? P-O-L-A-R-R. No, P-O-L-A-R-R. That's still one of my main editors. I do have Photo Diva, but I don't use it much. And I have Photoscape, which I use on my book covers and things like that. Things that have text, I'm really good with it. But my main editor, guys, is a free version of Polar. I've never needed Photoshop or Lightroom or anything like that. I just learned how to make do with this free stuff, because at the time, that's all I really had to use. So you can get maximum results for no cost if you know how to do it. You got to learn how to use your editing software. But get back on the story here just for a minute, and we'll wrap up. But I just kind of wanted you to know where I come from. But by the time I got to my last city, the last 3 years I was in China, every free moment I had, I was taking photos again. Usually in the afternoons I had no class, so I'd go in from my lessons, I'd eat lunch, and I'd take off with a camera. I'd go to a park where I had old buildings and people, and and I liked walking the streets also and taking street photography. I love shooting. China is a photographer's dream in many ways if you could be over there for any extensive amount of time. But I ended up getting my D7200, which is my primary camera to this day. It takes really, really, really good video. It's 1080p, but it's really good stuff. And I use my primary lens is still my 85mm and a 50mm I use a lot. And I have a Sigma 70-200, which when I need it, it's there. And those lenses are not light, so carrying one around all day can be tough. But I got the stuff, and I learned how to use it. I learned how to get the very, very best pictures that possible. And originally I started out shooting just aperture priority. I didn't understand all the mechanics to manual, and then I switched totally over to manual, probably my last 4 or 5 years over there. And I still will go back to aperture priority from time to time, especially shooting wildlife. I think it's really good for wildlife. And I use auto ISO on most things, especially if I'm going from shade to sun like shooting wildlife. All my portraits, almost all the portraits I use some kind of flash. Stuff that you see in my other videos in this channel, you can see what I use. But my photography journey, though, guys, is basically I shot a bunch of photos and I edited a bunch of photos. And I'm not talking about hundreds. I'm talking about tens of thousands of photos. That's when you really, really start learning what you can and you cannot do. And I also shoot only in JPEG. I've never shot RAW. So I've learned how to edit JPEG, even though everybody says, oh, JPEG is a processed photo. Yes, it is, but there's still a hell of a lot of things you can do with JPEG that most people have never even tried. And so I will tell you that JPEG is not a bad thing. You need to learn how to use it. Remember, when you learn how to make do with a little, it makes it easier later. But anyhow, that's kind of my photography journey. Is I just moved my way into portraiture, shooting tons of models, international models. Kazakhstan and Africa and China, obviously. But I made my photography good enough to be in demand, and I made my photography good enough that I never tried to compete against other photographers in China. I wanted to just be part of their group, okay? But when I got the respect from the other photographers, I got invited to shoot more and more and more with them. So here we are, we're the pros and the prosumers, we're all working together in big groups. We go out, I might call or tell some girl, I say, hey, can you model for me and my friends, this weekend or whatever. And I was the one usually in charge of that because I had access to all the young, the girls that wanted to model. But we would all shoot together and learn together, because everybody seems like they have a different trick, they have a different thing that they get with their photography, and you got to be up for that. Don't think you know everything, because you don't. Don't be afraid to learn from other people. But anyhow, that's a little bit about how I got started, and now you know a little bit about me. You might understand some of my other videos better. But I really do. I hope you have a great day, and I'll try to see if I can find some good photos to share with you. But I want you to have a great day and go out there and take some pictures, okay? We'll see you later. Bye-bye.